so that anyone that couldn't join will have access to the content, and we'll probably post it on our YouTube channel so that everyone can view that. Just to say that there will be the opportunity to ask questions at the end of each of the speaker sessions. So if you just raise your virtual hand, I'll try to get through everyone in the order that they go up, but obviously bear with me on that. And if you are asking questions, I would ask that you come on the screen on video, because it's much nicer for the speakers when they can see who's actually asking the question, please. All the slides will be sent out after today's meeting, so you don't need to worry about taking photos of the slides or writing too much down, because everything will be distributed fairly immediately after today's meeting. And I just wanted to do a competition law reminder. Obviously, you're all aware that when you come to an AXREM meeting, we're governed by very strict competition law. If we did tread into muddy waters today, I would stop proceedings immediately. So it was just a reminder of that. So I'm not going to do an introduction of everyone on the meeting today, because that would take up the first chunk of the session, but I did want to do an introduction to all of the speakers. So if possible, if we could start first with Alexandra Hammond, if you want to do a quick introduction, Alexandra.
Sure, thank you so much, Sally. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra Hammond. Most people call me Alex, so feel free to do so as well. I'm head of Sustainable Procurement and Supply Chain at NHS England and Improvement. So I'll be talking a little bit about our Supplier Roadmap, as well as the Evergreen framework that we'll be putting in place next year. So look forward to having a conversation.
Thanks, Alex. And then Martin Toomey.
Hi everybody, good morning. Martin Toomey, I'm Sustainability Manager at NHS Supply Chain, so I cover all the towers, and I work very closely with Alex and her team on the agenda.
Thanks, Martin. And then Chris Taylor.
Hi Sally, morning everybody. Chris Taylor, I'm a Customer Service Manager and Sustainability Champion at Philips. Been in the health industry now nearly 20 years, the last 7 with Philips. Predominantly work in service, but I'm also a member of Philips sustainability community, who help drive sustainability within Philips. And I also work with Sally on AXREM supporting sustainability issues as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And just to say, Chris won our AXREM award as a sustainability champion for the UKIO Awards last year. So just thought I'd mention that as well. And then John Wilkinson.
Thanks, Sally. Yeah, so my name's John. I'm a radiographer, and I'm currently a programme director at Imperial in North West London.
Great, John. Okay, so we'll get straight on with the agenda. There are still people joining, but we will crack on because, like I say, we've got quite a lot to get through. So you should be able to see the slides on the screen. So I'll now hand over to Alex to continue. Alex, if you want to just give me a nod if I'm going too slow with the slides, and I'll speed up a bit. Okay.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks. Is it possible to put the slides in presentation mode? From the, I think we're seeing the, perfect. There we go, great. So thanks so much for having me today. And I do appreciate that some of you may have heard a bit about our supplier roadmap at other parts of from other events or from Sally sending around the information. This is hopefully an opportunity for me to just go into a little bit more detail about our plans, but also an opportunity for you to ask us some questions, because I really would like to make sure that we're addressing the specific requirements and potential issues or barriers that you might be anticipating. So hope this is a conversation. I will start by presenting, but do as Sally says, raise your hand if you've got any questions. Just a tiny bit of background. I started in the NHS England Improvement in April of this year, and have since created a team. By March, we will be a team of 14 people. We've had a bit of a rapid growth within the team, and it really does represent a huge commitment on behalf of the NHS to address supply chain emissions. The Greener NHS team, which was previously known as the Sustainable Development Unit, to whom we feed into, we aren't officially part of the Greener NHS team, but they were 7 people about 2.5 years ago, and now over 100. So there's a significant push to make sure that net zero, social value, modern slavery, all of these things are incredibly important to the NHS and are being really invested in. So what that means is that there's an opportunity for us to support our suppliers and our partners in this. So we are not just here to say, do this, come hell or high water, or you're out. It's about saying, look, these are our ambitions as the NHS. We want our suppliers to be on board with that. We appreciate some of you are ahead of us, and some are just getting onto this journey. So it's really about partnership. So I hope that sort of permeates the slides I'm going to go through. I certainly will not speak to you for 45 minutes, I promise. But I will go through the slides and hopefully let you know a little bit about how we are doing. So maybe next slide, please, Sally. And could you go back into presentation mode? Sorry, I apologize for.
The only thing is, if I'm in presentation mode, I then can't admit anyone to the meeting or do anything else on my screen.
Okay, that's fine. We'll work with this. That's absolutely fine. So for those of you who have been paying attention to Net Zero, you'll know that we published the first net zero healthcare commitments globally in October of 2020. That set out our vision and our mission for sustainability, and it included a statement that before the end of the decade, the NHS will no longer work with suppliers who are not aligned to or exceeding our ambition for net zero. So if you think about the timelines here, so that was October 2020. I joined in April 2021. So I inherited this this helpful statement and was basically told, your priority is figuring out what this means. We've made this statement. We now need to have some clarity about what that's gonna look like. So I got to work on that and did a lot of communicating and question asking of the supply chain. Many of you will have contributed to our supplier survey that happened over the summer, and also through various workshops we've had, et cetera. So we've been able to do quite a lot in the last year, and I'll tell you a little bit about the roadmap in a moment. More widely, the Greener NHS has had some pretty significant achievements as well over the last year, despite all of the challenges of delivering healthcare in an environment where we're struggling and dealing with COVID still. We have saved enough electricity in the NHS to power 1.1 million homes. So we are steadily decreasing our impact as the NHS. The supply chain, we have a lot of work to do. Partly, we have a lot of work to do on data. If I'm honest, we need to start gathering the impacts of our supply chain in a more systematic way, and that's what I'll talk about a little bit later with Evergreen. Next slide, please, Sally. So one of the really key things for us in the NHS is not just addressing things in isolation. It's looking at the way that we deliver healthcare. And so what we call this is models of care. But essentially it's about saying how, where are the areas in the delivery of healthcare for a patient that are just inefficient and not good for the patient, not good for the environment. And so we are really thinking about that in a quite a systematic way in the NHS, and you'll see that with the overprescribing guidance that's come out, the social prescribing of medicine, et cetera. So really, it's about keeping people healthy over the course of their life, preventing them coming into hospital in the first place, if at all possible, providing the right care at the right time in the right place. So this model of everyone coming into big hospitals to get care and get treated is a little bit antiquated now, and I think we're really thinking very carefully about how we deliver care in a more systematic way. And for you in your industry, that's really important, because of course the imaging and all of the equipment that involves is, you know, it lends itself, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on this, but it lends itself to a big hospital environment because it's easy to sort of concentrate, and the NHS likes that. They can sort of put all of their expensive kit in one place. But I know you're innovating, and I know that that's a part of your, you know, you're really in partnership with the NHS to help make care more local and more dynamic. And so that you know, really is fantastic. So you guys are big contributors to this sort of lower carbon models of care. Next slide, please. I won't go on to too much for that. But so this is probably a familiar graph for many of you, but this represents the entire NHS carbon footprint, this pie here. And what you'll see is that those wedges that are represented in blue are the supply chain. So we as a supply chain team own 62% of the carbon emissions from the NHS. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think one of the things that's really important about this is that we are unable to make a difference on this without working in partnership with you. By nature of scope 3 emissions, our supply chain emissions, is what we influence rather than what we control. So it's really important. And so if you can move to the next slide, in the Net Zero Report, we identified 13 interventions, we call them, or just 13 things we need to do to get us from over 16,000 kilotons of carbon in the supply chain down to zero. And you'll see that. I mean, hopefully you can read that, but you know, it's switching to removal of single-use plastics. It's electrifying our freight transport. It's making sure that we move to bio-based polymers instead of plastics. But what you can see is the big biggies are our suppliers' emissions. So the non-pharmaceutical suppliers and the pharmaceutical suppliers make up, you know, over 8,000. So over half of our emissions in the supply chain. So this is really important that we actually think about how we can move our influence down the supply chain. We've got some support. So if we can move to the next slide, this is the statement that was in the Net Zero Report last year, and so I've been working hard with my team to get us to a place where we can say, what is this going to look like? So on the 30th of September, we took our plan to the NHS board, and I'm really pleased to say that it really went down a storm with our board and our stakeholders. If you can move to the next slide, Sally. So the September board was Amanda Pritchard's first board as chief executive of the NHS. So that was quite an exciting moment. I've worked with Amanda at Guy's and St Thomas's for a number of years, where she was a champion of sustainability at the time. And I think really there's a real galvanization and traction that she understands now about the importance of sustainability at a local level, and, you know, in terms of what we influence, but also throughout our supply chain, and that connection. I think what's really great for me to see is the connection between healthcare delivery and proper, excellent healthcare delivery and sustainability. You know, they are not at odds with each other. They're absolutely in synchronization with each other. So she, amongst other fantastic things she said at the board, said this, which was, the effects of poor air quality and climate change are already being seen in our GP practices and in our hospitals. And it is absolutely right that the NHS is part of the solution. And importantly, she recognizes that we cannot do it alone, which is why it's so important that we throw down the gauntlet to our suppliers today too, which is really about the sort of next steps in terms of what we're asking our suppliers. So if we can move to the next slide, Sally. So this is our supply chain roadmap. Now, I apologize if the writing here is a bit small. And as Sally said, these will be shared, and they're available if you Google Greener NHS suppliers. The details of this are on the Greener NHS website. But what I will say, and because I've got a little bit of time, I'll spend a little bit of time going through some of these. I won't go through every single dot, but it's really what we're trying to do with this roadmap is not set out a bunch of new targets and difficult things for our suppliers to achieve. What we're trying to do is align to UK government policy that pre-exists, but ensure that we're taking it to the next level, and hopefully in the process reduce the administration for our supply chain to comply with these asks. So in 2022, my team will be launching the Evergreen Supplier Framework. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. This is really, for me, it's a language between our supply chain, you guys, the people who are delivering the absolutely critical equipment and services that we need to deliver healthcare, and the decision makers in the NHS. So I will speak more about that, but we'll be piloting that over the next couple of months and hopefully launching Evergreen in mid 2022. So that's our intention is that we'll be able to engage with that sort of towards the middle of next year. From April 2022, we are mandating that every procurement decision made in the NHS incorporates a minimum 10% weighting on net zero and social value. This is, for those of you who are procurement nerds like I am, this is Procurement Policy Note 0620. It already applies to central government and its arm's length bodies. It doesn't apply in the NHS. We are not required to do this, but we really think it's important. So we are incorporating this minimum 10% weighting on net zero and social value from April 2022, regardless of size, regardless of type of procurement. This will apply to every single procurement that is tendered from April 2022. It already applies to NHS England Improvement as of April last year, and we're seeing more and more organizations include this already. So it's not all going to suddenly be from the 1st of April, but it will be mandated from then. So my team has created some guidance and some helpful information for procurement professionals within the NHS to do this effectively. We don't want this just to be tokenistic. We need this to be really meaningful. And importantly, the social value elements of these procurement decisions are about the delivery of that specific contract. So the PPN 0620, the social value model, is about what suppliers you guys can deliver and support this NHS to achieve as part of the delivery of that specific contract. So it's not about your sort of corporate vision or your CSR policy or that kind of thing. It's about specific key performance indicators as part of the delivery of a contract. So that you will start to see in procurements more and more, and really in everything from April next year. From April 2023, so a year later, we will require that all contracts that are all suppliers that are contracted for projects with a value of £5 million or more per annum. So in big contracts, really, we're talking about here, but anticipated value of £5 million per annum. All those suppliers will have to have a carbon reduction plan that covers their scopes 1 and 2 emissions, and this will need to be available on your website, and it will be a pass-fail. So do you have it? Great. And it needs to be, importantly, aligned with NHS ambitions, so a net zero by 2045 timeline. For those of you that work in central government or other government bodies, this is already in place. PPN 06, it's called PPN 0621 creatively, and so this we anticipate shouldn't be too much of a change. We are trying, as I said before, to align to government policy. What will be interesting is that the next year we will apply this to every contract. So regardless of size, regardless of value, we will be asking all suppliers to have a carbon reduction plan that covers their scopes 1 and 2 emissions. And this is really important because we need to make sure that we are all on this journey, and that we don't start creating exceptions and saying, oh, this isn't, it's too hard to do this. We really need to be ambitious here. So I know some of you will already have scopes 1 and 2 emissions targets, and they'll be publicly available, and you will be in great shape. This will be really no problem for you. But we really want to make sure we're bringing everyone on this journey. And the process of this, we have given ourselves and our suppliers some time to do this. We're not saying get this done by next month. We want it to be meaningful. We want it to be robust, and we want to be able to help. So if suppliers are struggling, we as a team have resourced in support to make sure that we can provide that assistance. So I won't go into every single detail, but we will be asking for Scope 3 emissions from April 2027. And this is really important because Scope 3 emissions are really where the vast majority of the emissions sit. And I know you probably know that already, but we have some suppliers where 98% of their emissions sit in their supply chain. So Scopes 1 and 2 emissions are important, but actually the real biggies are in Scope 3. And we see that in the NHS as well. So from 2027, we'll ask for all suppliers to have the Scope 3 included in those carbon reduction plans. And by 2028, we would like to know the impact, the environmental impact of the products that provided to the NHS. And now this is important because we know there are a lot of different methodologies for measuring the impact of products and even services as well. And we will work. We don't have a specific answer at the moment on what methodology we recommend that you use. That's why we put it in April 2028, and that's where we want to work in partnership with the supply chain to understand what are the best methodologies, what are the clearest and most robust methodologies for measurement, and then set those very clearly in time for you to make those analysis on your products. So we are pushing our suppliers along this journey. Some of them, as I say, some of them are pushing us and saying, "Come on, NHS, hurry up! You need to be doing more." But we do appreciate that not all of this will be incredibly easy to do. But we really want to make sure that we emphasize the importance of working with you and creating networks to achieve the asks on the roadmap. I will move on swiftly on. So I won't go into too much detail, but I've just got 2 slides on the procurement policy note. So the procurement policy note 062 of the social value model, we're seeing this already. This is a picture of a woman called Sam, and she works for a company called SIVA, and they deliver supplies to Guy's and St Thomas's hospitals in London via a riverboat service. So she's on the boat day in, day out, putting deliveries onto the boat, and then they meet a cycle courier at the shore and bring them to the hospital. So we're seeing social value being incorporated into procurements already, and it's really fantastic. We'll see more of that, and we look forward to the great work that can be done. The next slide, please. With procurement policy note 0621. Oh, I think somebody's not on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, can I just check that everyone is on mute, please? I think someone's just joined that's not on mute. If you could please mute, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. So I think I've gone into enough detail on this. We're going to go to the next slide because I want to spend just a couple of minutes to conclude on Evergreen. So the Evergreen supplier framework. Now, we do appreciate the use of the word framework is a little confusing because it sounds like something you need to apply to in order to provide goods and services. And it sort of is, because it will in time become a mandatory requirement to tendering and for NHS projects. However, what it is essentially a maturity matrix for us to understand how our suppliers are doing against the roadmap asks that I've just been going over. So we've got 3 levels, well, 4 levels. We've got minimum expectations of suppliers, which hopefully everyone is doing. Then we've got three levels of maturity. So we've got early adopter suppliers, mature suppliers, and influencer suppliers. And the process for engaging with Evergreen, we are anticipating will be really straightforward. We will use an online free portal for suppliers to do a self-assessment. There'll be a process of answering questions and demonstrating, for example, that you've got a carbon reduction plan, linking to the website, et cetera. And you'll be given a sort of a a level, a certification that then lasts for a year. If you want to reapply, if something happens really positive in that year, you can reapply and get a upgrade to your position, or wait till another year and then do another self-assessment. This will follow you as a supplier, so it will not, a little bit like your Dun & Bradstreet number, it will be integrated into our procurement system, so that when you go to tender for work within the NHS, those making decisions will be able to see where you sit on Evergreen without you having to put it in every single time you go for a tender. And I think this will be, I'm anticipating this will be quite a useful mechanism, because what we intend for this to do is really reduce the administrative burden. So you're not asked every time you tender, give us your carbon reduction targets, tell us what you're doing on sustainability, what do you how, so the corporate approach, your wider commitments as a company will all live within Evergreen. What you'll deliver as part of the contract will still be in the tendering documentation. If you perhaps want to, provide training opportunities for local people or that kind of thing, that'll be part of the tender for each and every procurement. However, your corporate policies, your corporate approach, your corporate commitments will sit within Evergreen and stay there. So we really hope that this means that you will have an opportunity to show the leadership that you're taking, to say, hey, we are doing more than just the bare minimum. We're not just having targets. We're also doing fantastic work on circular economy, for example, or we're doing, interesting things around innovating our products to be more mobile or more transportable, that kind of thing. So I should say that you can certainly study the fine print that you can see here on the right-hand side, but a lot of this will be refined and confirmed through the pilot that will be running from January. So some of this is sort of set in stone. I think we do appreciate that, in order to be a level 1, you must have your scopes 1 and 2 emissions and an ethical sourcing policy. That will probably remain, but we will be refining the items that sit in level 3 as well. So this is going to be a work in progress, but we hope, as I said before, to launch Evergreen towards the middle of next year. And we really look forward to it. We really hope it's something that is relatively low administrative cost for you, but hopefully high impact in terms of communicating your work and the commitments to net zero and social value that you've made. So I think that is the end of my presentation. These are my contact details. And if you do so wish, follow us on LinkedIn. There's lots of information about our program, what we're doing. If you go into LinkedIn and look up NHS Procurement Transformation, you can follow our team and find out more. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. That's great. We are going to have a panel Q&A after each of the presentations, but if we are a little bit ahead of time, so has anyone got any specific questions for Alex that they'd like to ask at this point? Please raise your hand. Yeah, Daryl.
Hi, Daryl Collin, Canon Medical Systems. When you're talking about net carbon zero, are you going to be recognising existing standards like past 2060 carbon neutrality?
So yes. However, we have a position on carbon offsetting, which is that we don't accept that as a route to net zero at the moment. We want mitigation and actual reductions. So
past 2060 requires you to have an improvement plan in it as well. You can't carbon zero. The thing is, I found it very difficult at the moment because I answered this sustainability survey last year and got a very bad score. Yet we've been working with ISO 14001 and PAT since 2009, and it's asking for reductions that we did about 10 years ago. And you on the journey like this, you certainly get to certain stages where you hit an impasse until you can do a real big step change in technology. Yeah, I mean, I put in LED lights and things like that, and 10, 15 years ago when it was still brand new technology. and it's asking for things on water when the type of business we're in, water isn't an issue. Yeah.
Well, I have to say we haven't specifically mentioned past. I would say what we are recognizing, what we intend to recognize at the moment are scores against CDP and EcoVadis and the NQC portal that SCCL uses. I think Martin will be speaking about that further in a few minutes, maybe. So okay. we will be recognizing. But I suppose part of the reason that we've incorporated these levels within Evergreen is to recognize those suppliers that have already done a lot. So it's not, the intention is to not, not just assume everyone's on the same the same position here, and to recognize the activity that happened 15 years ago.
I'm going to say the survey that's in the system that we did last year and the year before, is that going to be replaced? Because there was a sustainability survey that we all filled in, which I thought was very rudimentary, to be honest, and really didn't give you a true picture of the company.
Having started in April, I don't know the survey you mean. We did a feedback survey on our program, but that was a different.
No, this is the one the NHS has been running for about 3 years. It asks for social, modern slavery, social, and there is a sustainability survey in there as well, which concentrated on electricity, waste, and water.
Yeah, so that'll be more along the ERIC data, or the scopes 1 and 2 data. I would say I wouldn't worry about that. I think with Evergreen, we are intending to bring everything into this new system. So the reporting would be through that one portal. But if there are, we really do want to welcome contributions to making sure that that's fit for purpose. So if that would be, we'd be happy to have a conversation about that as we begin the pilot, to make sure that we're asking the right questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. And then Ela Dobson.
Hi, Alex. Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely superb overview of the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for this, and delighted you're working with AXREM. So I'm the chair of AXREM at the moment. I have a few points to raise and some comments and questions to ask you. What work are you doing with NHS trusts in this area? Because one of the concerns we have is suppliers are doing a great deal of work in all of these areas to produce greener, more sustainable products. And the challenge we face is that the NHS continues to do what it's done for a number of years, which is either select products that are of a user choice or cheaper. And inevitably, with some of the newer things that suppliers are doing, some of it could be potentially slightly more expensive. So we aren't seeing the uptake of the work that we're doing in our product ranges and the services that we're providing, because customers are continuing to do what they always do. So what work are you doing there?
So there's a number of things. We have, as part of my team, we have a work stream on what we call operational intervention. So that is really about working with trusts to make the right decisions at a local level to really live sustainable procurement. Some of that is quite as you can imagine, operational. But we really are. So last week, well, the 11th of November, so a couple of weeks ago now, we led something called a spotlight day on sustainable procurement. So we had it was an internally facing event, several events actually on the day, trying to help our procurement decision makers and those in trusts understand what it is we're trying to achieve. We had over 600 members of staff from the NHS, from the procurement world, from the sustainability world, from the clinical world, attending events. So we are really working with them to try to build this into the decision making. And we know that cost continues to be a challenge. We know that, and we have to work with that. But part of the reason that we are incorporating this 10% weighting or minimum 10% weighting in all of the procurements is to be able to have a mechanism to recognize the great work that's happening out there in the supply chain. So we also have a team within my team that works on what's called procurement practice. So making sure that those questions they're asking are helpful and relevant. So in the example of the purchase of imaging equipment or whatever, they could say, we want lower impact, lower electricity, lower carbon, all of these things that whatever it is that they might require as part of the delivery of the contract. And I think that's where we have that mechanism and we can use that more. I'm really keen to make sure that we don't have, I've worked in hospitals my whole career, and I know what it's like to be given the sort of the financial kind of, absolutely no, we can't do that because it's going to cost more kind of thing. And actually what we need to do is rethink value. And that is the real message that we are trying to get across to decision makers, that it's not just about the capital cost. So we led a webinar with HFMA on the Spotlight Day, and that a big part of that was about how we make sure that we look at the overall value of the decisions that we make, thinking about where the savings are felt. Sometimes the savings might be felt in electricity, and that's not the cost center of the decision maker who's going to buy the equipment. So how we marry those things up. So there's a lot of work being done around that, and I do recognize this challenge because it's very frustrating. You come out with something fantastic and excellent. It might cost slightly more as a capital cost, but it'll have a lower cost over time, and the NHS just doesn't see it. So that's part of our job, is to help encourage that kind of decision making.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. But what I'm hearing you say is that you're going to encourage them to do this. And actually the journey that you're taking us on is much more defined and prescriptive in terms of what you want us to do to work with yourselves. And we completely agree with that. But we still feel there's a massive gap in what you've just said. I can see there's a lot of work going on. But, to just try and persuade the NHS is one aspect. But I do feel that probably it requires, mandate is probably a strong word, but at least mandate that they look at what's available and evaluate what's available, and evaluate in line with the new things that you're putting on the agenda. Because what we're seeing, and I know it's early days, is that customers are all too quickly not even looking at what's sustainable or what's green, even though some fabulous things are being presented to them. And this is my worry. And, and like a lot of things in the NHS, the uptake of what you're doing and the great work that you're doing, and what we're likely to obviously follow and do with yourselves as well, the uptake could be many years to come, in terms of how it works in the field. And this could be a big, big showstopper in terms of how this whole thing can pan out. So I think it just needs a bit more focus in terms of, the trust getting engaged, because they're a very key part of it all.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, we are mandating that they include a consideration for net zero and social value in every single procurement. That is not optional. It is absolutely mandatory. So I think that gives us the mechanism to have that guidance to say this is what you need to be doing as part of that. So I do agree. I mean, I think you can appreciate that the system is significantly it requires transformation, and that will take some time, but yeah. You're right. We, I think that we need to be really pushing this message and requiring meaningful engagement rather than, tokenistic about, how you planted 10 trees.
Well, we welcome this opportunity, absolutely, Alex, to work with you, and moving forward, clearly, through AXREM, we will communicate with you where we start to see difficulties and the way in which things are happening, because I think that's critical that you understand, so that you can start addressing it, very early in this journey. So thank you very much. Fabulous work, and we're on this journey with you.
Thanks.
Just to say, Ela, today's the start of the journey for AXREM, so we're hoping off the back of this to set up a working group where we kind of help members all the way through the process and keep in constant touch with Alexandra and her team on all the different developments. I'm going to just do one last question then from Richard before we move on to the next speaker, but there will be opportunity to ask more questions later. So Richard Coldrick.
Yes, thanks, Sally. Yeah, I'm just going back to the questionnaires that Colin was talking about. I'm slightly confused on that. The 3 questionnaires that we had to complete, which I think were as part of an NHS supply chain request, so the modern slavery, the carbon emission, the social value, which I did. Are they the same questionnaires you're talking about, or are they a different set of questionnaires?
Is that a question to me or?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Alex. Yes,
so
please.
I think that solves a bit of a mystery for me. I think that those questionnaires have come from NHS Supply Chain,
yes,
which is not NHS England, which is why I wasn't super familiar with them. So but you've got Martin on next.
Yeah, I'll answer the question next, Alex.
Okay, great. Look forward to Martin. But can you just say, so will we be getting these questionnaires going forward as part of the plan? The ones you're referring to that we don't have to worry about when we put tenders in.
Well, so there'll be, we are further aligning with NHS Supply Chain, but from NHS England, we will only have Evergreen. But NHS Supply Chain will potentially. I know that there are mechanisms that NHS Supply Chain uses to gather and collect data, which are separate from my team.
Okay.
So right. I think, but Martin and I are working together quite closely. NHS Supply Chain, or SCCL, has come under NHS England in the last 6 weeks. So our intention is to further align our approach and hopefully, reduce the administrative burden on suppliers like yourself. So we'll keep that on the agenda. So apologies, that's a bit of a politician's answer, but
that's good news. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, so we'll move on now. There will be opportunity to ask more questions later. So we'd like to welcome Martin Toomey, who is the Sustainability Manager at NHS Supply Chain. Take it away, Martin.
Thanks, Sally. I've got to follow Alex on this one. So just go to the first slide. I'll do a bit of updating first of all, if I can. We'll answer the questions around the questionnaires as well later on. So first of all, we've welcomed a new chief exec, Andrew New. I don't know if he's been introduced to you guys or not, but he's getting around as many people as he can. He's been in post since the beginning of September. He's got some new ideas, some new ways of working, and he's putting the 10-year plan together where he sees the NHS supply chain going as an organisation. There's also a prior indicative notice out about our target operating model, which was published last week. So we're going out to the market to look at the way we operate now and how we can improve it. And that will inform the tender for next year. So there'll be a tender for supply chain going out in about 18 months' time. So I just wanted to cover those 2 things off with you. And also, as you know, Alan Wayne's left us now. He was our sustainability champion on SCET and on the board. Chris Holmes has now taken the mantle up. Chris is our supply chain director. So Chris is my sponsor. So we'll quickly bring Chris up to speed on sustainability. So just go to the next one, please, Sally, if you can. We've all seen it. I won't apologise for duplication because there will be some duplication in my presentation of Alex's, but I'm going on perspective of NHS supply chain. So we last year hardwired sustainability and supplier resilience into our business plan and apportioned a corporate KPI to this, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But we also, as Alex said, the publication of the Net Zero document in October 2020 sort of superseded some of our work, but not all of it. It also complemented some of our work, and we are fully aligned to the sort of key milestones in the in the roadmap, but we will be bringing some of those forward because of our sort of life cycle frameworks. So there's a framework being developed now and will go to market before the requirement, because of the cycle of typically 4 years in its lifetime. The requirement to do social value and carbon reduction will be included in those. Just go to the next slide if you can, Sally, please. I'm trying to remember. So yeah, like I said, the sustainability and resilience element is being put in there. And like I say, it'll be in next year's business plan. We will still be doing some of the work we're doing now. We'll definitely be doing some of the work we're doing now, but we'll have to add to it. If you go to that next slide, sorry, I can't. It doesn't seem to. Yeah, it's not showing the detail behind it. So let's go to the individual ones then, please. So the first one, and I think this is going to answer some of Richard's questions here. We in supply chain take ethical procurement, social value, that support our staff to volunteer very seriously, and we've always had a labour standards programme in place. We transferred that labour standards programme into the NQC portal. It's actually a government portal. It's just known as NQC because people are familiar to the phrase instead of the supplier registration service. And what we've done there is we have a labour standards assessment, and there's also a modern slavery assessment, which is a government requirement that any supplier any business that's got turnover 36 million or significant work in the government supply chain will have to do a modern slavery assessment every 12 months. So last year, Tower 7, which you guys sit underneath, sent out a modern slavery assessment. They also sent out a carbon waste and water assessment and also social value assessment, because we wanted to understand what you guys were doing in that space, in those spaces. That's why they were put out there. We will, and it goes in line with what Alex was saying, we will require you to start carbon reporting, and that's around the carbon reduction plans that you may have and the requirement of that PIN that was mentioned, 0621. There's also a clamour for us to provide carbon footprint of our customers. So NHS trusts are asking us, what is our carbon footprint going through supply chain? And we don't know that yet. I think it was mentioned before about data, and we haven't to date carbon footprinted our supply chain or our scope 3 emissions, which is all of it. And we desperately need the carbon footprint of product as well. So that will be coming over the horizon, and I think Alex has indicated 2028, but we need to start working on that now, because it's a big task. It's not a small ask. There's also I'll go on to the other stuff in a minute. So labour standards, human rights will remain. Where we see a high risk category, we will ask our supply chain to do a labour assessment, and some of that requirement may be pass fail on tenders in terms of scoring. So at the moment we've identified over 500 different new suppliers that will have to take an assessment. I think we're up to about 480 at the moment. Just do the next slide, please. Sorry. So the waste and circular economy, I think the target there was look at 3 feasibility studies and try and bring that to market. So we have done. We've actually identified 5. So marine manufactured devices is one of them where I won't go into detail. I think probably in later slides, but so marine manufactured devices has got a circular economy element to it, and it's got that triple bottom line that our customers are looking for, and I think this is where we need to hit to get them to change, going back to comments being made to Alex about, you know, mandation or bringing the NHS trust on that journey. So what the remanufactured devices do is deliver a carbon reduction, a cost saving and a waste reduction. So if we can hit those three key spots, our customers should, I'm not saying would, but should go on the same journey as us. So the other one is around recycling, repurposing, remanufacturing of furniture. That was let this summer, and 40% social value was considered in that framework agreement. The other one was surgical instruments, where we've got repair, recycle, remanufacture, lots on there, and we've got also alternative materials to steel, and there's lots of polymer surgical instruments that we can look at. Just go to the next slide. There's a couple of slides on remanufacturing. It was Alan Wayne's baby, this one, and he really championed this. And like I say, this bottom line effect, triple bottom line effect of savings, and we've got a program of engagement with trust, and we're transferring quite a lot of trust onto the actual not buying the remanufactured devices, but actually giving the original equipment up for remanufacture. So if you can go to the next one and then to the next one, I don't want to dwell on all this. So this is another one where it's a big issue within NHS. It's about plastic products, single-use plastics and packaging. And, you know, talking frankly, when the pandemic hit, plastic soared, and it's still at their levels where we don't want to see it. And there's work around, you know, reusable items going on everywhere at the moment. But we took a target of reducing single-use plastics coming into the system last year, and we set a target of 350 tons of plastic being taken out of the supply chain. That focused on single-use catering consumables. So, you know, your knives, forks, spoons, cups, earbuds, things like that. And we're extending that out. We've got a product portfolio of about 100 different alternatives. So we are saving a lot of plastic going into the system. We also focus this on clinical waste containers. So going to board-based containers or having more recycled content in containers. So some of our containers are up to 96% recycled content, whereas before they were 100% virgin materials. But we have to look at more, and we are looking at more. But again, I think it goes back to the comments around technology and things getting into step where they are on that journey for us to make a big impact. We can't all do it on year one. There may be technologies that come in year 5 or year 10 that will make a difference. But it's also that sort of change in behaviours and questioning, does this item have to be single use all the time? It will help next year when the plastic packaging tax comes in. Obligation there of that if your packaging is 100% virgin plastic, you will get charged £200 a tonne in tax on anything over 10 million tonnes of plastic packaging brought into the UK. We last year through our supply chain, through our suppliers, brought in 3,200 tonnes of packaging, plastic packaging, which the tax would apply to. So to avoid that tax, your packaging has to have 30% recycled content not to be taxed. So the requirement is that you need to register with the tax office. Your first submission is July next year, and you will be you would be taxed on a monthly basis. So you will be paying a tax bill for your plastic packaging on a monthly basis. Our direct imports ourselves, so the plastic we've imported, it was 24 tonnes last year that we're liable to pay the tax on to. So we're probably paying, you know, quite a small figure. But like say, our supply chain was much higher. It's near enough, you know, £600,000 liability there if it was all virgin plastic packaging. Not too sure. We need to have a breakdown of that. So I just wanted to give you that heads up on that one. So could you go to the next one, Sally? So this gives you this next one is about that, yeah, the biggie, the carbon reduction, the greenhouse gases, and the climate change impacts that we have. And our greatest impact, and the NHS's greatest impact is you guys, our supply chain and our products. That's where our carbon sits. We're on the journey of our own journey by 2030 to be carbon neutral within our logistics operation. So it's our sheds and our vehicles. I'm going to Leyland Trucks on next Wednesday to look at our first electric vehicle being rolled off as part of the government's project on trying to electrify logistics fleet, and we're having a fleet of 7 fully electric vehicles on test for a year, with the option to buy them after the test. So we're decarbonising our supply chain quite rapidly at the moment. So the big thing for us to do in this space is do our carbon footprint. So we're looking at how we're going to measure that, and then we're looking at how we reduce it. That goes back to the statement around that policy note about carbon reporting and the carbon reduction. We will be looking in all our procurements to have a carbon reduction target. Don't know what it looks like at the moment. We don't know how big it is because we don't know how big the prize is. Basically, we don't know actually what our footprint is and where it sits within our product portfolio. You can guess some of your equipment will be high up there. But we are working on a way of getting that information. Now, again, NQC, we're working with NQC, and they've got a carbon reporting module which isn't out there, which will supersede the carbon waste and water assessment. So we may be starting putting into our frameworks the requirement to use that assessment to tell us what you're doing. But we are looking to engage some suppliers, some consultants to give us our data straight away, so we know exactly proxy what our carbon footprint is. Could you go to the next one, please? Well, this is just a bit of information of where we see some of our key suppliers on their journey and how we've sort of tracked it along the timeline of getting to net zero by 2045. We've done it on our strategic suppliers only at the moment, so there's only about 15. What we want to do is have a look at across all our supply chain, but you can understand that's quite a big task for us. Next slide, please, Sally. And just to re-emphasise what Alex said in her presentation, it's a big footprint. It's a massive footprint for us, and we're contribute very much to that. And you're our scope 3 emission, so you're that green emission there that our blue arrows pointing to. I'll skip through these next two slides because you've seen them. The interventions and the roadmap which we talked about. I wanted to show you these latest slides here, and I'll take some questions from the guys. So every month we've got a corporate dashboard which gets produced, and this tells you of the 4 key areas we focused on those KPIs we talked about plastic reduction, CO2 reduction, and other things around. We're also tracking our staff's volunteering. We need to start to understand what we're doing on social value and what impacts that is having. Like I say, we've only just started on that. The massive PPE tender had social value in it. The gloves tender which both of those tenders represent £11 billion worth of expenditure if we took up all the requirement to buy. So the social value ingrained into those agreements. So we need to see what our suppliers have said they're going to do for us and then start reporting on that. So that'll be a bit scary for the tower. Next one, please. This is the NQC tool we all talked about. This is our way of gathering corporate social responsibility data of our supply chain, and it's to do it in a consistent way across all the suppliers and all the towers. What we did last year, we heat mapped all our categories and said, okay, of our core pillars of sustainability, human rights, greenhouse gas, circular economy, waste and plastic, what are the big hitters, who are the big hitters, and what do we need to understand to get those down? And that's why you can consistently see those questionnaires being asked of you. Again, with the comments being made, we don't want to do duplication or double, put effort in. So when you complete one of these questionnaires and some other tower or provider asks you to the same data, you can share it. So you don't have to do it again. All you do is share the information across to your next customer that's asking you the information. We put an agreement with NQC that any of our NHS customers that log into the system can see our data, so they can see the reports, they can see the scoring, so they don't have to ask you again. So it takes away that duplication from you. So if anybody asks you about this data and that they want it, and they're asking you to put it in a different format, just point them to the NQC portal and say, it's already there, guys, use it. Next slide, please. So that's just demonstrating what we see on the system. So we can see a consistent approach, like I said. So every supplier that answers an assessment, the data is collated into an aggregated response that you can see on the screen there. But below that, it will be the individual supplier scoring and what they've said in their assessments and what information they've given to us. So we will be working with you guys through contract management and things, and through other sort of drivers and the Evergreen framework to understand what's your trajectory to be net zero, because that's the way we're going to get to net zero in the supply chain. And it will also inform the target operating model as well. That's going to be part of that, because the tower operating model has been going since 2018 in its full guise. So, lessons learned and new eyes on it coming in. The structure may change. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see what comes back from the marketplace. I think that's the last slide, is it, Sally? Oh, that's that carbon reporting one. I won't talk about that one again. That's it. Thank you. Any questions before we go to the panel?
Thanks, Martin. So yeah, we have got a bit of spare time because we're running a little bit ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I wanted time for the questions to be asked. I know there'll be a few. Oh, there you go. I knew there'd be a few.
So Richard Coldrick is first. If you'd like to ask a question.
Hi, Richard.
Yeah, sorry, me again. Yeah, the assessments, Martin, you talk about in the questionnaires, the three of them, isn't there? I've now had notification they've expired.
Yes.
But I did contact the portal people running it, and they did say that it doesn't matter because the information remains there. Is that correct?
It does remain there. So
yeah.
if you needed to do another questionnaire, or there's an option at the top of the answers.
Yeah.
Assessment. So it's easy enough for you just to redo them.
And redo it if you want. Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. And Eva Dobson.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Thanks, Martin. A really good explanation as always. Thank you for that. I have a couple of questions, please, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
I'm probably totally confused here, but this
that's me on a daily basis.
Hopefully, I'm not the only one. Just checking, is this the same work as the Evergreen program, or you know, because it sounds similar. And if not, you know, is the work the SCCL are doing, you know, is that going to be aligned with the NHSE work so that there's not additional work created? That's the first point. The second is, you know, in the tenders, the NHS supply chain tenders, they'll be incorporating the 10% minimum requirements on evaluation. But, you know, how will that work with trusts when they're calling off from the frameworks? You know, who will be responsible for ensuring that they have considered this as part of their local evaluation?
Okay, first part of the question, yes, we're fully aligned with what Alex's team's doing. These are policy notes by government, so we are applying the same policy notes in the same way as Alex is to get you onto the Evergreen framework. So to demonstrate compliance to that framework. So we're not duplicating. We're working hand in glove with Alex's team. All I'm doing is reflecting the same policies back to you in terms of what we're doing, what we're saying. Where Alex has said by April 2023, we probably will want the requirement going into our frameworks before then. So when you awarded onto the frameworks, it's already baked into the requirement to do the reporting and reduction plans, rather than going back out to you and say, well, by April 2023, you need to start doing this now. So we're putting them into there. So we're already got that requirement to do that type of thing. The social value side of things, this is a challenge we've got at the moment, is to where it sits on a framework, we've considered at that level. It can't then be reconsidered at a call-off level unless we break it down into the call-off requirements. So the challenge for us is also we're an international supply chain, not a UK-centric supply chain. So social value tends to look at the UK in isolation, but we've got to have a look at it across an international supply chain, and therefore look at what we can do in social value outside of the UK as well as inside of the UK, if you understand what I mean.
Mm.
I know also we've worked closely with Alex's team on the social value guidance as well. I thought I saw another hand go up, but not quite sure who that was.
Yeah, so the next question is Bob Child.
Good morning, Martin.
Hi, Bob.
I represent the healthcare IT community,
Yeah.
part of AXREM. One of the problems that I foresee is a lot of the infrastructure is owned by the NHS.
Yeah.
You just there's a big thing with the pandemic was around home reporting. And what do we see? Lots of XUs, display monitors being sent home to clinicians for use. Is there not a drive by yourself or NHS England to get this updated? We constantly are integrating to systems that are so out of date. You know, there's all sorts of things. I think the drive needs to be within the NHS to get their own systems up to date, because we're using things, just look at power, the systems that are being used are so behind what's currently available. And I really do feel that we maybe, yes, this is about suppliers, but you also, the infrastructure is supplied by the trusts. Is there any move, or what are we doing about that? And perhaps that's a question not just for you, but also to Alex.
Well, I can answer it if you want me to answer it.
Please.
Because I always have an opinion. Yeah, the whole system has to change and has to modernise and develop, and constrained by budget and cost. We're doing a core technology refresh ourselves at the moment because our systems are so out of date and clunky that we're trying to modernise ourselves. There is a drive. I noticed yesterday that the states have got a net zero strategy, and they're looking at how they could get to net zero by 2045. So that's about electrification. It's about, you know, modernising the systems and infrastructure. But you're talking a lot of infrastructure out there. Like you said, it's from when the NHS first landed all those years ago. and it's a big monolith, it's a big ship to turn around, and it does take time. And I think, like you say, it's that, how do we get to modernise the NHS? How do we do it? And we're trying to do it ourselves to support our customers, or electronic data interchanges, code technology refresh, so it's easier, more efficient to order, and you've got view stock numbers. We're trying to electrify our fleet, so we're not burning carbon in there. We're trying to take out waste, like you say. I think NHS Digital has been merged into E&I as well, Alex, I believe. So we're all trying to bring it into one umbrella. The problem is that all our customers are individual businesses themselves, and they make choices that we can influence, but ultimately they make their own choices. And it goes back to the comments being made. How do we push our customer base into this space? And we're trying very hard every day to get the more sustainable products. We've made a statement, a pledge, net zero pledge. It's on our website, where we're going to look at the most sustainable, environmentally friendly products and have them available. We're going to try and take out packaging from our supply chain. We're going to try and take out single-use plastics where we can. It's difficult at the moment because obviously it may be in the specifications. So we're trying to do everything we can to do what we can as an organisation to get to that carbon neutrality that everybody's, the environment that everybody wants. Alex got a question. Don't put me on the spot, Alex.
It's not a question. It's just a follow up, and I think
okay, yeah.
It's just, so there's a significant investment in infrastructure happening at the moment. As Martin said, as announced yesterday, NHS Digital and NHS X are coming under NHS England, and with the intention of bringing all of these things together to address the infrastructure challenge. I mean, it's really a critical problem. I mean, the NHS invested about £265 million last year in its infrastructure and decarbonisation, which is, really fantastic. It's a start, but it's, we need billions and billions to get there. So I also wanted to say, I've just had a chat with my team, who have been simultaneously in a meeting, and we've been looking at how we can take the reports that you've been talking about, Richard, and that sit within NQC and integrate them sort of automatically into Evergreen. So we've actually, my team's been on a call with NQC this morning talking about doing just that. So the intention is that we will really do our very best to make sure that if you put information in, you're not asked for that information again. Why we're piloting this is we need to get it right. So we, do bear with us. Tell us if we're asking you twice and we're not aligned. We will do our best to be aligned. But just to give you that reassurance that we are really trying to make sure that the SCCL approach and the NHS England approach, which are now the same thing, really, but are coordinated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So just checking, has anyone else got any more questions for Martin before we move on? No? Okay, so I'd like to welcome to the meeting Chris Taylor, who is a sustainability champion for Philips. I'm just going to reshare the agenda slides. Hopefully you can all see those, and I'll hand over to Chris.
Thanks, Sally. Hello, everybody. So you're not going to listen to me for the first couple of minutes. I'll be glad to know I've got a VT. So Sally, if you can just run me that, please.
So I'm just going to share my screen and reshare it because I think I have to make sure it's got sound.
No problem.
2 seconds. Let me just add. So do let me know if you can't hear it.
Every day, healthcare professionals come together to save and protect lives with urgency, passion, and commitment. So imagine if we took the same approach to healing the environment. Human health and environmental health go hand in hand. While the lives and livelihoods of millions around the world are threatened by climate change, the world's healthcare systems contribute to over 4% of global CO2 emissions. That's more than aviation or shipping. As an industry, we have a responsibility to act. Because by taking care of the planet, we are taking care of people. When we come together to reduce greenhouse gases, we can drive meaningful change towards a more sustainable and resilient future of healthcare. This means setting and delivering on ambitious environmental targets, pioneering big ideas and breakthrough circular innovations, and developing collaborations that go further and faster. Let's work toward carbon-neutral hospitals with energy-efficient medical equipment powered by renewable sources, hospital wards with minimal waste, medical consumables that can be used time and time again, and acute and integrated care provided regardless of a patient's location through digital solutions. Philips is taking concrete action to further reduce our environmental impact. We have been carbon neutral in our operations since 2020 and aim to source 75% of our energy from renewables by 2025. We are teaming up with our customers and supply partners to keep carbon emissions across our value chain below the global 1.5 degrees Celsius target, and we're significantly reducing our products' energy consumption. Every day, people in healthcare achieve incredible things. Let's all be inspired to do the same for the climate and decarbonize healthcare together, making sure people can live healthy lives on a healthy planet.
Thanks, Sally. Next slide. So I'm sure, like me, you were glued to the telly over the last few weeks watching the COP26 conference. As you can see from that, we're at a pivotal moment that concerns us all, not only as individuals, but as an industry. The health sector we support not only is battling pressures of patient backlogs triggered by the pandemic, but it's also simultaneously trying to transform itself to become a more resilient system, fit to support the needs of future generations, able to withstand pressures from climate change, God forbid, further pandemics and other issues we may not even thought of at the moment. As you saw from the VT and what Alex was mentioning earlier, historically the healthcare sector has been responsible for as much as 4% of total annual carbon emissions, which is double that of the aviation industry. At the same time, 94% of patients now consider a hospital sustainability programme to be one of their top priorities, while 58% of healthcare executives view sustainability as one of their immediate priorities, which is truly a perfect storm for sure. However, when it comes to climate change and the transformation of our health industry, it should be noted that this is not about finger pointing or any one company trying to prove it's the best. This is the one challenge that we all must face together. Either we all win or no one does. So we need to support the evaluation of the health industry and each other and adapt quickly to these new changes and challenges. Next slide, please, Sally. Oh, sorry, that one. Yeah, that one. So yeah, further analysis, and again, Alex and we have covered this and Martin covered this earlier. Scope 1, 17% of these are direct emissions originating from the hospital's open operations, emissions from buildings, anaesthetic gases, for example, transportation of staff and patients. Scope 2, 12% indirect emissions generated by the production and distribution of energy that is consumed by the hospital. And Scope 3, this largest part, 71%, are indirect CO2 emissions caused by the production of transportation of goods, services purchased by hospitals such as medicines, food, as a sales equipment, clothing and waste treatment. The solutions we provide as suppliers to the health industry is part of this Scope 3. So the future needs will be delivering eco-design and as we mentioned earlier, these circular products with a low carbon footprint, as well as digital solutions that help increase the operational efficiency of a hospital and as a result helps to reduce their Scope 3 impact. In addition, we can also help hospitals reduce their Scope 1 and 2 carbon footprint by, for example, offering these digital solutions that help reduce patient travel or medical equipment that is energy efficient, powered by renewable sources during use. Next slide, please, Sally. So to give you a bit of background on Philips, our eco credentials have been part of our culture from the start. Philips was formed in 1891 with social programs for employees. We moved into 1970s when Philips introduced its first guidelines on environmental performance for substances used in products in manufacturing. And then just recently, in 2016, we introduced a 4-year sustainability program focused on making a material impact. So this was a strategy that we aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, focus on mitigation climate change. So that's sustainable use of materials and circular economy, good health being for all as well. So we had to prioritise initiatives that delivered some tangible values for our business and its operations, as well as our wider ecosystem of customers, partners and supply chain. We completed this programme, which was called the Healthy People Sustainable Planet 2016 to 2020, a title that rolls off the tongue, as I'm sure you agree, last year, and confirm that we delivered on all targets, which included, next slide please, Sally. 0% net operational carbon footprint, 70% sales from green products and solutions, 90% of our operational waste is recycled, 15% sales from circular products and solutions, 100% of operations powered by renewable electricity, and 100% of our industrial sites sending zero waste to landfill. And does sound good, while it is an important milestone in the Philips sustainable journey, it is far from over. Next slide, please, Sally. So Philips was one of the first technological companies to have its CO2 emissions targets for the 2020 to 2040 period assessed and approved by the Science Based Targets Initiatives, or the STBI. Philips received further recognition of its environmental, social governance performance, achieving top positions in the Dow Jones Index, Sustainability Index, and the Sustainalytics rankings, as well as for 8 consecutive years on the CDP Climate Change A list. In March 2021, the company was awarded an ESG score of 90 out of 100 by the S&P Global Ratings, which was the highest score an organisation has been awarded to date. Philips has also achieved second place in 2020 on the Wall Street Journal's 100 most sustainable managed companies in the world. As a purpose-driven company, we're obviously conscious of our responsibility towards society and the need to continue to embed these sustainability values deeper in the way we do business. On the environmental, we're working to minimise our impact on the planet by taking climate change, driving the transition to a circular economy, implementing eco-designs in our parts and products, and partnering with our suppliers to reduce their environmental footprint. On a social basis, we aim to deliver social impact by improving people's health and well-being, offering the best place to work and engage with our suppliers and the communities where we operate. And from the governance, everything we do is anchored ethically and through responsible practices. Our management structure, operating models, ethic frameworks, and robust risk management help us maintain these high standards. Next slide, please, Sal. So to give you an idea of how we approach this and this vital issue, as I mentioned earlier, we'd looked at these UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in January 2016, the UN created 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, as a short name for them, of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And these were widely adopted by most world leaders. Philips made a commitment to contribute to these goals by focusing on the areas where we felt we could make the most impact. So for us, that was SDG 3, ensuring healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. SDG 12, ensuring the sustainable consumption of production patterns. SDG 13, taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And then in Philips, we break these down further into 4 associated areas of control. So that being access to care, eco-design, climate action, and circular economy. Next slide, please, Sal. So access to care, just a bit of background on this one. Universal health coverage, or UHC, is about ensuring people everywhere can access the quality health-based services they need, when and where they need them, without suffering financial hardship. However, according to the World Health Organization and the World Bank, up to 3.5 billion people, which is half the world's population, lack access to the health services they need, with almost 100 million people being pushed to extreme poverty each year because of out-of-pocket expenses. There's also an estimated 14.4 million here in the UK, which I must admit I found quite surprising that it was that high. Health has a huge impact on an individual's quality of life. It's a prerequisite to obtain an education as well as employment, and ultimately a healthy population is also essential for the growth and prosperity of a country. As we know, COVID-19 has only intensified this situation. It overwhelmed most health systems in many countries and stalled the progress towards achieving universal health coverage by 2030. However, there was an upside on this. The COVID pandemic has reignited the urgent global call to build more robust, resilient health systems that we can stand these future crises and secure the path to UHC. It has also accelerated the widespread adoption of digital technologies such as telehealth and portable ultrasound, and set a precedent for stronger ties with the public, private and non-profit sectors. Excuse me. There are plenty of other promising developments too. For example, more than 4.57 billion people are now actively online, giving them greater access to healthcare. Information and mobile technologies are continuing to make it easier for people to track and manage their own health. We've also seen an increase in the over 75 generations who previously were resistant to digital technologies, now utilising this technology thanks to COVID, to assist them with everyday shopping, for example, and communications with family. These ambitions to transition to a digital healthcare system, which paved the way for acute integrated care to be provided regardless of a patient's location and without compromising the quality of care, is something we can easily utilise here in the UK. Also helping reduce our carbon footprint while putting the needs of the patient and their requirements first. At Philips, we believe that this digital connectivity and technology innovation are key to expanding access to care and achieving universal health coverage. We've seen from this technology, it enables standardizing and suitable, sustainable operating procedures, clinical decisions supporting enabling task shifting, a low cost of ownership, accessible and available care via telehealth, and it also centralises care to address skilled personnel shortages. In light of increased costs of healthcare, we've also seen new business models and financial solutions have been needed that bring together donors, investors, governments, NGOs and the private sector. And I think the key message that we're sharing across the three presentations is this partnership and that being the key to addressing the complex challenge, especially when expanding access to care. Next slide, please, Sal. So eco-design. We aim to design all our products and services in line with eco-design requirements by 2025. This means improving the energy efficiency of our products, using less resources and more recycled content, avoiding the use of hazardous substances, designing for circularity, and making our packaging easier to recycle and reuse. Over the years, we will continue to raise the bar on this and these the focal areas for all our solutions. By consistently applying this life cycle analysis as the backbone of our eco-design process, we're able to identify and realise significant improvements while lowering a product's or parts' environmental impact. The environmental hotspots are captured in 4 focal areas, which are energy, packaging, substances and circularity. So energy is an obvious one, obviously. The energy consumption is often the single most important factor in determining a product's life cycle and its environmental impact. Obviously, by improving the energy efficiency of a product, we can reduce its energy consumption and ultimately the carbon footprint. Packaging, and as we mentioned earlier, I think Martin mentioned this, material, weight, volume reduction, along with smart material choices, e.g. from recycled or certified renewable sources. 100% recyclable, easily separable, will help minimise resource consumption and environmental impact over the life cycle of packaging. At the same time, Designing packaging to be reusable, recyclable, or even compostable also ensures it's circular economy ready. Substances, so that's products, are made using a range of substances which may have an impact on people's health or the environment. So by minimising or eliminating the use of these hazardous substances and materials, we can reduce our product's health and our environmental impact. And finally, circularity. Circularity refers to the potential of a system or a product or its components to contribute to the circular economy. It's calculated by assessing environmental performance over multiple life cycles. So taking into account, for example, the recovery of material and the reuse in new products. So also on that, we've got upgrading, serviceability, refurbishment, spare parts, harvesting, increased recycled content and recyclability, weight reduction, and the selection of more suitable materials. So these all help with reducing our resource consumption. Circularity also includes its product's lifetime. As a longer lifetime will reduce resource consumption and also removes things like transport emissions and associated with the delivery of new products. Next slide, please. Climate change. So this is obviously the big one. We all know that this is not a distant problem of the future. It's happening right now. And that's why we've taken action to rethink our business models and decouple economic growth from the impact we have on the environment. In 2020, as I mentioned earlier, we achieved our goal of becoming 100% carbon neutral in our operations and sourcing all our electricity from 100% renewable sources. We're committed to sourcing over 75% of our total energy consumption by renewable sources by 2025. Stretching our ambitions further, we will work together with customers and suppliers to reduce CO2e emissions in our entire value chain in line with the 1.5 degrees C global warming scenario. Our long-term CO2 emission targets are being assessed and approved by the Science Based Targets Initiatives, which is a collaboration between the CDP, the United Nations Global Compact, the World Resources Institute, and the Worldwide Fund for Nature. A collaboration that aims to drive climate action across the value chain. The approval confirms that Philips' targets are in line with the level of decarbonisation required to keep the global temperature increase below 1.5 degrees C compared to pre-industrial temperatures. Next slide, please, Sally. So you've heard, I think Martin discussed this earlier, and we've mentioned it a few times, circular economy. So a few years back, we realised the negative impact of our linear production cycles that we were using here in Philips. These are cycles where you take materials from the earth, make a product, and sell that one single product to one single customer and consumer. It triggered Philips to take a circular approach to production and make a make-use return process. Designing these circular loops means designing regenerative systems in which resources, both input and waste, emissions, energy leakage are minimised by closing material loops. This can be achieved through enabling sharing, return resources, back to nature models, recycling, parts harvesting, refurbishment, and these all help to contribute in slowing down the consumption cycle. As you can see on the right hand side there, we've got dematerialise and optimising usage. Here we show how leveraging software, connectivity, and digital infrastructure can have a major effect in reducing our environmental footprint by enabling dematerialisation and optimising use of resources. Services and upgrades. Service business models will shift from ownership to access. So maintenance and repair of the equipment are included in the agreement, as well as the latest technology upgrades and software releases. That's probably this big mind shift that we've talked about, and probably the one area working with with Martin and Alex. I think we could get the most benefit as an industry as we move this forward. In refurbishment processes, components that are faulty or close to failure will be replaced or repaired. Additional cosmetic changes will be executed, such as cleaning and painting. Parts recovery. Any returned medical equipment will be disassembled into parts that we can reuse as spare parts for service or refurbishment purposes. And finally, recycle, including recycled plastics, where we recover vital materials from end-of-life components or waste to reuse in new products. We also have a programme within Philips called Closing the Loop, where a vast amount of systems in circular, where we run a programme where we take back all Philips medical equipment that our customer is willing to send us, and ensure to take full control to ensure all the trading materials are repurposed or in a responsible way. At a time when health systems are under more pressure than ever before, achieving our goal requires new ways of doing business. So, for example, as Philips moves to become a solutions and service provider rather than a product supplier, we are increasingly partnering with our customers in new performance and outcome-based models. So it's no longer about offering, say, Scanner X, for instance. It's about offering the best possible imaging and analytics to enable first-time right diagnosis and personal treatments. So under this model, for example, we may as suppliers, we may retain ownership of the install base, while, for example, radiology or oncology departments get the functionality they need and are able to offer the best quality of care at lower price. Models like this support our drive for the sustainable use of resources. And the importance for circular design also can't be overlooked, as it's the ability to deliver better healthcare while reducing the dependency on natural resources. At its core is creating products and services that no longer have a life cycle with a beginning, a middle and an end. Instead, hardware can be owned and maintained by the provider, who can repurpose it for future use, whilst the functionality of a device can be delivered as a service. And speaking of hardware, more customers consider using refurbished systems. This is a simple change that can be made now without compromising patient outcomes. Not only does this expand the lifespan of medical hardware and reduce the overall use of raw materials, but it also brings down the cost, enabling providers to diversify their capabilities and provide access to vital treatments. And we handle this through a program called Diamond Select here in Philips. Next slide, please, Sally. One of the projects, initiatives that we've been collaborating on here at Philips is our Clean Air for Schools programme. So Philips has been contributing to the National Clean Air Improvement programme, supporting DEFRA in its clean air strategy. So here in the UK, we undertook the Clean Air for Schools programme in 2019-2020, which set out to equip all schools across the UK with the tools and knowledge to improve air quality. With the help of Global Action Plan and the University of Manchester, 19 schools across the Greater Manchester area teamed up to show the impact their actions could have on local air quality. It was a first of its kind programme, and it set out to quantify the impact of air pollution, which is the world's largest environmental health issue, responsible for compounding respiratory, cancer and heart conditions. And also just recently, studies are also linking poor air quality to people developing COVID-19. Together we researched the impact of poor air quality on 6,000 school children's lung health and working memory in the most polluted neighbourhoods in the UK, which was one of the reasons why the programme was run in Manchester, showing just how vulnerable children are to the impact of air pollution. The programme showed reducing air pollution between school drop-off and pick-up times could reduce the impact of debilitating lung functions in 20 to 50% of children, as well as improving a child's ability to learn by 1 month per year. In 2 years, this research produced literature reviews from the University of Manchester and Queen Mary's University of London, using Philips air quality data to determine the impact of lung resilience and on a child's working memory. The results. This resulted in the development of a free framework that any school in the UK and Ireland can use and create their own tailored framework specific to their needs. So that could be they're near a busy road, their heating's using old boiler systems, or they've got low quality air ventilation. The Clean Air for Schools framework is also currently been vetted by international organisation TAPAS, which is a network working in partnership with GAP that are looking to strengthen this framework. And the long-term ambition is for the future introduction to the 24,000 schools in the UK. Additionally, we're also supporting a health inequalities research programme commissioned by Imperial College Consultants, and this programme contains a chapter focused on social determinants, which includes the impact air quality has on exacerbating these inequalities. Air quality is a big subject, and these are just two of the projects that we're involved in, here in the UKI at this present moment. Next slide, please, Sally. Excuse me, this is cold, not COVID, that's kicking in at this moment in time. So spare parts is obviously a big one for all of us as suppliers. We transport our goods in an obvious area that has major impact on climate. Today, there's a wide range of smart and sustainable solutions in the market that can challenge traditional transport methods, such as short sea shipping, eco-friendly container train solutions, less than container load shipping, and a combination of different transport modes in intermodal freight transportation, to name just a few with the greener alternatives. Yes, we currently still ship a lot of our goods by air when critical customer needs demand this. It goes without saying. But by tracking our logistics footprint and moving to these more greener options, the aim is to annually reduce our emissions by the equivalent of 89,000 trees of CO2 compared to previous solutions. In the UK, we've also opened a local parts storage to handle 95% of our parts requirements here in the UK, and so aid in the reduction of our logistics carbon footprint. When you have the possibility to prioritise cost efficiency and eco-friendliness over shipping times, ocean freight and/or rail is often a sustainable option compared to air freight. At this moment in time, it should be said. Shipping by air freight has up to 55 times more emissions per shipment when compared to ocean freight or rail. So we need to try and consider these more eco-friendly ways of shipping in order to meet our global carbon reduction targets. Compared to traditional transport solutions, these solutions are far more eco-friendly alternatives with lower exhaust emissions. In order to allow ourselves to deliver on time in line with customer expectations, we obviously need to start integrating these alternatives into our planning, as well as starting a dialogue with customers and shaping expectations in order to ship more sustainably. Next slide, please, Sally. So not-for-profit environmental impact disclosure organisation CDP has for the 5th year in a row recognised our supplier engagement lead, Philips on its supplier engagement leaderboard. This is an annual assessment of disclosure about how well a company proactively works with their suppliers to ensure sustainability through their value chain in terms of climate change mitigation, and a lot like Martin and Alex are doing here with ourselves. So in 2016, we established our Supplier Sustainability Performance Programme after finding that traditional auditing was insufficient in driving sustainable improvements. The Supplier Sustainability Performance Programme holds suppliers to their highest standards via performance-based assessments and classification and tailor-made improvement plans, an approach that we found improved sustainability performance of our suppliers who entered the programme in 2019 by 36% in the space of 1 year. More than 200 suppliers currently participate in the programme, with additional suppliers are being added annually. In October this year, we announced an additional ambitious action to combat climate change by stepping up this supplier sustainability programme, with a goal of 50% of our suppliers committing to science-based targets of CO2 emissions reduction by 2025. If successful, this major push to decarbonise our supply chain by supporting our suppliers and incentivising them to adopt these new SBTs will have an impact 7 times greater than the reduction of CO2 emissions from Philips' own operations. Obviously, in full clarity, our progress updates will be reported annually in our company's annual report. Next slide, please. As well as helping our customers to become more sustainable, we also want to ensure we're living sustainable values at work. So here in the UK, we recently moved into our BREEAM certified office in Farnborough. So BREEAM, if you don't know, is the world-leading sustainability assessment method for master planning projects, infrastructure and buildings. It recognises and reflects the value in high-performing assets across a building's environmental life cycle, from new construction to in-use and refurbishment. Our new office now has a variety of sustainable systems implemented, including EV charging points in the car park, PIR LED lighting across all areas, which automatically turns off if there's no one movement in that area, recycling streams for paper and pallets, so none is transferred to landfill, and solenoid controls which shut off water automatically if it's been running for too long. Monthly, on top of this, we also report our water, energy and waste into a global dashboard that is externally vetted. The move to the new building has been groundbreaking for us in Philips and UKI, and the model has also been reviewed at worldwide level for future adoption of all Philips offices. Next slide, please, Sally. So last year, we started our vision to improve our impact on CO2 emissions from travel here in the UK by transforming our fleet away from fossil fuel vehicles to a more sustainable electric hybrid fleet. The move has been really well received by the vast majority of company car drivers who have been really engaged with the message and early adoption of the technology. As we race through 2021, we've already moved over 22% of our fleet to either electric or hybrid vehicles, with the vast majority of vehicles up for renewal this year moving to orders of an EV or a hybrid vehicle. We've also introduced a salary sacrifice scheme to allow more of our employees, including their families, the chance to adopt to the new technology as part of a wider all sustainable commitments here in the UK. And incidentally, the first person on that scheme has just took delivery of their EV car just this very week, as it happens. So locally, we are also working with a centralised team and LeafSpan to develop a monthly interactive dashboard to help us track our emissions and demonstrate our improving CO2 footprints. And we're looking to have this deployed by Q1 of 2022. If we continue this trend by the end of 2022, start of 2023, we project that we will have halved the number of sold petrol and diesel fuel vehicles in our fleet compared to this year, which is a great testament and commitment to the early adopters of the technology, and an ongoing commitment to reduce our carbon emissions in our entire value chain in line with the 1.5 degrees global warming scenario based on science-based targets. So infrastructure and technology allowing, which is obviously the big part of this, will mean Philips UKI move into a fully hybrid or EV car fleet by 2025, some 5 years ahead of government targets. Next slide, please, Sally. So we all know and inspired by the NHS commitment to be the first net zero healthcare system by 2040. You may have seen that on the 30th September, the NHS published, and Alex mentioned it earlier, and Martin, the Net Zero Supplier Roadmap, charting a route towards a net zero healthcare system and laying out a process for collaboration over the coming years. The endpoint is clear on that. By April 27, all suppliers will be required to publicly report emissions and publicise a carbon reduction programme aligned to the NHS Net Zero target for both their direct and indirect emissions. While the NHS itself can influence the emissions of suppliers through things like these procurement choices, and this will obviously play a significant role, I'm sure, they still need suppliers to join them on this journey. We need to take these bold decisions and actions that make our own organisations and make clear evidence-based commitments. While today I've just outlined some of the Philips areas that we're focused on, I'd also thought I'd take a minute just to outline some independent research that we are launching in Q1 of 2022, which builds on our focus on addressing healthcare inequalities, which I referred to earlier in the discussion. Our Q1 report has been commissioned by the University of Exeter, who selected them as an academic partner, given their in-depth knowledge of the circular economy from consulting with partners like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They also helped with the UK government in preparation of G7 and COP26, and also the connection to NHS Sustainability Team Lead, Dr. Nick Watts. The report will examine how the UK healthcare system can best achieve its net zero ambitions The role of industry in supporting this journey will be supported by cost policies to share with ministerial departments and other stakeholders. It will outline the burning issues currently faced by the NHS and the private sector, offering structural solutions for addressing issues on the front line, including clear case studies and a clear view on strategic priorities and roadmap these, including proposed interventions. We will also make sure that this is shared through AXREM following its publication, so we will make sure that goes out to everybody. So next slide, I think that's the last one. So just to sum up, and thank you for listening to me drone on. Philips get this nearly every week off me, so it's nice to actually drone on at somebody else for once. Climate change and climate responsibly is one area where we can all work more closely moving forward, and that I think is the clear message moving forward. As the sustainability movement gathers forward momentum, so will demands for clarity and possibly accreditation to back up everyone's commitments on climate change. Sally mentioned this earlier, and I think Daryl as well. AXREMs are going to play a vital role in establishing our market's needs moving forward, that's for sure. We all already have these sales and service focus groups well established within AXREM, and as Sally mentioned, you know, and in my opinion, it's time is now right for a sustainability arm within AXREM, where we can develop and support the health industry as it moves with its vital transition and support of its net zero ambitions. As I stated earlier, again, it's not about finger pointing always best. This is the one area where, you know, when it comes to climate change, we only win if we all win. As members of AXREM, we all understand the major threat climate change has for the health industry, there and our staff, patients and the public, as well as the need to improve the world's health now and for future generations. The only way we can do this is working together, and together we can make a healthier planet for healthier people. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate the time and that. I'm just going to unshare slide. There's a bit of a, I don't suppose everyone would mute. Okay. Hopefully. Oh. Chris, are you okay to mute a second?
Yeah, certainly.
Sorry. I don't know whether everyone else was hearing the echo, but it's horrible hearing your own voice. So yeah, thank you, Chris. Really appreciate that. And the reason that I asked Chris to present today was because I felt it was really good to have like a case study of what a member is doing. And I'm sure that other members are as advanced as what Philips are. And like Chris says, it's not a competition. It's actually one thing as an organisation we can all work together on. So one of the proposals that I'm going to put forward at our exec committee strategy day on the 7th of December is that we set up an AXREM sustainability special focus group, because this is a long-term issue and a long-term process, and I want to make sure that members are informed at every stage of all the latest news and information, and that's where hopefully we can continue to work with Martin and Alex and other people within your teams to kind of attend some meetings and provide updates to members. And I think it'll be a really good forum for members to be actually able to share their best practice and, you know, discuss things that you're struggling with. And it's something there's not a competitive nature to this. Everyone's got to do it. So actually it's a really good thing that you can share and support each other on. So hopefully members will think that that's a good idea. I think what we'll do now is go into the Q&A session for the panel. I know you've already asked some questions, and obviously Chris has done his now, so I don't know if anyone's got any specific questions for Chris. But if you want to raise your hands, if you have got a question, please, that would be great. Okay, so Daryl.
It was for Chris, really. I noticed you're going for hybrid and electric cars, and I struggle with the same issue in Canon. I don't know whether you've had any data back in terms of hybrid cars, but we changed all over to hybrid cars about 3 years ago, and we've had to move away from that because, in fact, because most hybrid cars are petrol with a service fleet, we found that the fuel bill went up by $250,000 because petrol, obviously you're using far more petrol than we were using diesel. So we've had to claw that back and wait for diesel hybrids to come out. We are going electric as well, but of course, electric still has problems for certain people with range anxiety when you've got people doing long distances.
Yeah, good question, Darryl. Yeah, I'll be honest, hybrid has been a minor take up for us. We've not took as many hybrids on. It's many a lot of the time, and going on that excellent phrase, charger anxiety, mileage anxiety, charger anxiety. It's mainly catering for that kind of market and giving people an option. EV, as we know, yeah, the infrastructure still is not there, and this is probably, you know, things like the NHS, etc., need to work with the infrastructure that we've got to help support this, and the UK government as a whole moving forward. The majority of cars are being full EV that we've done, so we are kind of making quite big strides on that one. I've not got any data, I'll be honest, on the hybrids, so I would definitely look at that one. I know that the choice to move diesels due to like particulates in built-up areas was one of our drivers that we wanted to look at, especially with the projects we do with air quality in the cities, etc. So that was one of the drives there. But it's yeah, it's something to watch. Obviously, the perfect solution is to move to EV, which is something that we are trying to do. But at the moment in time, we've given people the option, but we will keep a close eye on that one.
Thanks.
Great, thanks, Darryl. Has anyone else got any questions for any of the panel? We've still got Martin, Alex and Chris all on the meeting. Oh no, it seems like everything has been covered in terms of your presentation. We're actually running a bit early, so we will continue. And I'd like to introduce John Wilkinson, who's the Programme Director for the Strategic Imaging Asset Management Programme at Imperial College NHS Trust. So I'll let you do all the intro and kind of what you're looking to speak to members about today, John.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks for the invite to the event today. As Sally said, I'm John. I'm the Programme Director for the SIAM programme at Imperial. And first of all, I'm just going to introduce my colleague, Sarah, who's going to kick off our presentation today. So I'll hand over to Sarah.
Thanks very much, John. Yes, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Sarah Sheard, and I'm one of the consultant radiologists at Imperial College NHS Trust, and I work with John there. So we decided to sort of join forces for this presentation, and the sort of reasons will become apparent as we go through. But we just wanted to talk today about what we're actually doing sort of in the hospital on the shop floor to address sustainability in imaging. And it's quite nice really sort of having heard all the presentations from sort of NHS sort of management and then from industry, sort of actually joining up the dots and actually finding out what's going on in other places. So that's been really good. So next slide, please. Sorry. Oh, hang on. I think we've got some. We'd sent some cancelled. Can we skip through? I'm just trying to. So
it's slide 62.
Yeah, slide 62, please. Yeah, so just to give you some background about our trust, really, for those of you who aren't familiar with us. So the imaging department at Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust spans 3 large West London teaching hospitals, which are St Mary's, Hammersmith and Charing Cross. They were previously sort of separate hospitals, and I think they merged back in sort of mid-2000s. So we're the imaging department consists of about 650 imaging staff, and we perform about 700,000 examinations per year. We're also a specialist centre for major trauma, hyperacute stroke and thrombectomy, paediatrics, renal transplant, cardiology and respiratory medicine. We're a member of the Imperial College Health Partners Academic Health Science Network. It's quite a mouthful. So there's lots of academic and research work going on. And we've recently been ranked 8th globally for imaging research by a US organisation. And sort of getting down to what we're going to talk about today, we're a member of the North West London Imaging Network. And at Imperial, we're leading on strategic procurement and also on developing community diagnostic centres. Our department is also host to the Strategic Imaging Asset Management Programme, or SIAM programme, which John is going to explain in more depth. And we also host an imaging environmental sustainability group, of which John and I are both members, and it's what's brought us together here today. So John's going to now just explain a little bit more about his role and the programme.
Sally, if you could just flick down one slide, please. So I'm the Programme Director for the Strategic Imaging Asset Management Programme, or as we call it, the SIAM programme. And the programme has a shared vision between our trust and the North West London Imaging Network. And that vision's been in place for some time, and it's no mistake that the first point in our vision uses the term sustainable. We're looking to put in place a sustainable imaging infrastructure plan for Imperial, and then in the future for the North West London Imaging Network. And we've used the term sustainability to represent financial sustainability, economic sustainability, but also to ensure we're taking into account environmental sustainability throughout the programme. As Sarah said, we lead on strategic procurement, and we're looking to improve integrated care in North West London by establishing community diagnostic centres, probably the hottest topic in imaging nationally at the moment. The programme is clinically led, and we're absolutely focused on improving performance and quality. So we're looking for a step change in performance. There's no patient waiting longer than 15 days for an examination, and for the department to be accredited by the quality standard for imaging. So really focused on clinical performance and clinical quality. And one of the things underpinning that is digital transformation. So, we're looking to ensure that any partner that works with us in future can help us digitally transform our imaging outcomes and support the network taking a wider view of imaging. So not focusing on imaging in the traditional sense, but looking at improving outcomes through imaging, and also in focusing on the population health impact of imaging. And the last point in our vision is probably the most important. It's about making Imperial and North West London Imaging Network, one of the best places to work, both in London and nationally. So really supporting and developing our team. So thanks, Sally. Just move. That's great. Thank you. So as Sarah said, we're both members of the Imaging Environmental Sustainability Group, and between that group and the SIAM programme, we've developed what we call our environmental sustainability framework. It absolutely mirrors the NHS Net Zero model. So initially we focus on, our imaging carbon footprint, the footprint of our department that's directly under our control. And the group have been really active in that space since the group formed a few months ago, looking at procurement, waste management, started conversations with the trust around energy sources, focusing on staff travel and imaging, ICT usage and processes. Yeah, I think it's fair to say I've really enjoyed being a member of the group. It formed organically. The driver for the group coming together wasn't the production of the NHS Net Zero plan or the SIAM programme. It was very much about there's a just thinking of Isla's comments earlier. This was organically driven. It was the team and the staff asking for the department to take a view on environmental sustainability and ensure it's central to how the department functions. The second tier of our framework is around imaging carbon footprint plus, and I guess that's why we're here today talking to you guys. We very much want to liaise with industry, and we want to work with you to ensure that there is a SIAM programme in particular. We can ensure environmental sustainability is at the heart of our decisions. So also in the NHS Net Zero model, and the paper, there was considerable discussion about establishing sustainable models of care, and that's something we've added into our framework because we think it's really vitally important. And at that point, I'm going to hand over again to Sarah. So if you could click down to the next slide, please, Sally.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so as we sort of have dug down a little bit into looking at how we can put environmentally sustainable models of care, such as outlined in the NHS Net Zero paper, into the heart of what we're doing in radiology, it became quite quickly apparent that there's really a lot of close similarities between the ideas we had there and all the recommendations from the recent GIRFT report. And I'm not sure how familiar everyone is, sort of coming from the clinical side, and I just assume, but it stands for Getting It Right First Time, and it's a sort of clinical report looking at sort of improving clinical outcomes and efficient use of resources and the workforce. And I think it was really nice to hear this in the first presentation. Actually, there's no conflict between achieving business sustainability, so financial, sort of workforce sustainability, achieving high standards of clinical care, and achieving environmental sustainability. There's actually a very sort of close symbiosis. So just to sort of run through some of the thoughts that we've had. So if you look at the table on the right hand side, we've got the Radiology Getting It First Time report, which was published in November 2020, and it had some recommendations. If we look at the left, back to the left, we've got the recommendations for achieving a sustainable model of care according to the NHS Net Zero paper. So in the first box, we've got optimising the location of care, care closer to home in the community. And I think for environmental sustainability, that sort of focuses on the need for travel. I think we saw in some of the pie charts earlier that patient and staff travel accounts for quite a large part of the carbon footprint of the NHS. And that sits really nicely with the GIRFT report, which says that having some location choice and the availability of community diagnostic centres would be a big sort of improvement in the way we provide care from a clinical point of view. Next down, so the NHS Net Zero suggests that earlier and faster diagnosis will allow for earlier and less intensive treatment, and they're implied sort of pointing towards carbon intensive, but actually obviously patients receiving less intensive treatment is also very desirable, and will improve sort of survival times and outcomes, for example, if we're talking about cancer. So the GIRFT report talks about faster reporting turnaround times for imaging specifically. And the ways we're looking at this are sort of using radiology networks, so really using the workforce to its best sort of capacity by expanding our sort of area that we report to, easier access to specialists and sort of out-of-hours services, for example. And then finally, at the bottom, NHS Net Zero talks about reducing unnecessary treatments and interventions and ensuring that all activity in the system represents best clinical practice. And I think imaging is probably quite guilty of this. It's very difficult to find out what patients have had done at other hospitals, and duplication, I think, is a very big problem. And if we say that every test you do in imaging has a carbon footprint, well, if you have the same scan 3 weeks later unnecessarily at a different hospital, then you've doubled your carbon footprint instantly. And there's no need for that really now, with the possibilities to share data between trusts and share our sort of admin and booking systems. So avoiding unnecessary imaging is also presented in the GIRFT report, because it's also expensive to duplicate tests, and is sort of just providing poor joined up care generally. And again, we can use radiology networks. And as John mentioned earlier, we're sort of aiming for quality standards in imaging accreditation. Yeah, it just really points out how everything will flow together in terms of environmental goals and business goals and clinical excellence. And I think I'll leave John last
Thanks,
slide.
Sarah. Thanks, Sally. So just very quickly focus on some next steps and some potential for the future. So Sally's been really helpful in helping us liaise with industry, and we're looking to hold an environmental sustainability roundtable to have some more in-depth discussions about our programme. And particularly what we're aiming to do is develop some environmental sustainability criteria which we will use in our procurement, and potentially following up the roundtable with a short survey of likely partners in the future. Yeah, we're keen to get out to market and start to procure this solution that's been talked about for a long time. Looking for a Q2 go live next year of our procurement, with a Q2 go live the following year for the SIAM solution at Imperial. So that's in the region of a £200 million 15-year long-term imaging partnership. And then once that is successfully implemented, we will be looking to establish a local North West London imaging framework, so the other member trusts can opt into the SIAM solution. And then looking further forwards, less nailed down at this time, but with some real potential. We as a group, particularly the Environmental Sustainability Group in Imaging, would like to undertake some research into environmental sustainability in imaging. What we've found is the papers that we're using to inform our work are international. We've seen huge variance in estimates for the imaging, the carbon footprint of imaging from 1% of healthcare up to 10-20% of healthcare. So we would like to be part of research into that. We would like to include environmental sustainability factors at the heart of our health economics in the model. And Sarah has already kicked off and is looking to carry on engagement with the Royal College of Radiologists on this issue, to assume that we're including the major decision-making bodies around radiology. So that's our last slide. Thank you very much. We are, I don't know if Sally, you wanted to take questions now or a little later.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So hopefully that will be interesting to members, and myself and John have been communicating during the sessions actually this morning, and we'll be holding the roundtable event on Thursday the 9th of December, 10 AM to 11:30. So all relevant members will get invite to that roundtable and be able to participate. So has anyone got any questions for John or Sarah? Yeah, Alex.
Sorry, I know I'm not industry, but it's great to know this is happening. I'm so pleased. I'm not sure, I would have known about it if I hadn't stayed on. So I'm really pleased to be aware of this, and just wanted to say to John and Sarah that we'd really like to be part of this and support. My team can come with ideas, but also help scale up what you're doing if possible, etc. So just really let's stay in touch, and thank you so much for this great hard work you're doing, because it's exactly what needs to be doing and happening in the system. So thanks.
I think if we can just reply to that quickly, I think it's I think the communication is difficult. I think our trust now has a green plan, which has obviously come from above and come from the NHS Net Zero strategy, but actually nothing's actually really going to happen. I mean, maybe it will happen, but it will happen very slowly if it's mandated, and actually nothing's going to happen unless it's happening everywhere. So on the shop floor, and it's been really nice today to see that it is happening everywhere. But I think, like I said, it's sort of time to join the dots is my feeling.
Yeah, I agree. And I really see that as sort of being, I mean, as this, we have a lot of work to do to join those dots. But I part of the ambition for my team is that we bring together these people that are doing good things, and we couldn't do it without organizations like AXREM that are coordinating that as well. So yeah, no, I really agree, and it's great. And within our team, we have this operational interventions team who are looking at kind of things to do at a trust level, and so I feel like that's a great area where we can really help take what you're doing and give it an even wider voice, hopefully.
And I agree, Alex, the more people that are talking about sustainability in the agenda, I think the more that we'll see happening, because there is so much good work doing, but I think it has been very fragmented. And I think that it's starting to become a little bit more joined up with the more publicity and media that it's actually now getting. And I think sessions like this, obviously, you know, you've learned something, Alex, from, from John and Sarah and vice versa, I'm sure. So I think these sorts of sessions are really useful, and I think that's where AXREM, we've now got a responsibility as the trade body for imaging to make sure that our members know what their responsibility is and what timelines they're working to, and that's why I think that a special focus group would be really useful, because it's a way that you guys can continue to engage with industry, but also the right people within industry, such as Chris, who was the sort of sustainability champion for Philips. Will have all of the people that are sustainability champions for all of the different members in one place, and I think that will be a really valuable forum for everybody moving forwards. Just a question out to members, really. Does everyone feel that a sustainability special focus group would be helpful for members? Anyone got any comment about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be good.
Yeah, I see a few thumbs up. That's great. Okay. So before we finish, can I just ask, has anyone got any questions for any of the speakers that we've had today?
It's not a question for the speakers, it's for AXREM, really. One of the things that Chris mentioned was obviously repurposing of equipment, reconditioning of equipment, which most of the big four are already have got facilities to do. But I was involved in an external assessment last 2 months ago, and it did come out that there is a potential problem. We've got MDD certified equipment coming out of use and going for remanufacture. And of course, it looks like potentially once we go into full MDR mode in Europe, we won't be able to issue declarations of conformity for it. I wondered whether AXREM and maybe COSIA are making any representations with the EU, because otherwise it's going to be an awful lot of equipment we will not be able to sell to anywhere in Europe.
The answer is no, I wasn't aware of that. But that's just the sort of thing we can discuss in this new forum, and actually decide.
Richard's smiling there because he's obviously come across it as well.
But yeah, it's something we can discuss as a trade body and decide how, and we can work with COSIA. Obviously, we have a very close relationship with COSIA, and actually our joined up voice would be stronger as well. So I think that that's actually an agenda item I can add to the first meeting's agenda. So that's helpful, Darryl.
Okay.
Just check if anyone else got any questions. Okay, so what I'm going to take away as an action from today is to, if everyone feels it is a good idea, I've got it on my agenda slides for the exec committee strategy afternoon on the 7th of December to propose that we do set up this sustainability special focus group. And I don't foresee there would be an issue or any pushback on that, because I think it's really important for all of our members to get on board and understand what they need to do and when by. So obviously also a follow-up action will be for me to stay in touch with Alexandra and Martin. We've been in touch before as well, and Chris, as our I've been liaising with Chris as kind of my sustainability sidekick, because he understands more about it than I do for AXREM. So we'll get that sorted, and then when we have our first meeting, obviously I'll let Martin and Alex know, so that we can engage further with you and potentially invite you along to give updates and things at these meetings. So I'd just like to thank all of our speakers for this morning. We've all got a little bit of time back, an extra half hour into your day. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I hope it's been useful to everyone. I will distribute the slides very early this afternoon. And if you've got any questions or queries that you've not asked and you wish to send me an email, please do. And yeah, have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Thanks a lot,
Wonderful.
Sally.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.